Good morning everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're back with another weekly recap. This week we did finally get the PvP balancing update which had the nerf to the granite maul as well as the Din's bulwark, as well as some changes to last man standing and some graphical reworks. We have some news on Runefest as well as some changes to how the European Union pay for RuneScape. As always, I'm going to be going over anything related to the old school RuneScape community this week, including a recap of the weekly Q&A. Anyway guys, hope you enjoy and let's get started. Okay, first up here, let's go over today's update, and it was called PvP Balancing, LMS Changes, and Elf Graphics. Now, the main thing they changed in today's update is two PvP weapons. The first one being the Granite Maul, and the second one is the Din's Bulwark. Now, the Granite Maul was a very low-cost spec weapon that dealt a lot of damage and comboed with other weapons very well. So what they've ended up doing is they've nerfed the Granite Maul from a 50% spec cost up to 60%, which means you can't do it twice in a row. However, to prevent specifically created Granite Maul accounts, they like to keep the high KO potential available, but at a higher cost, thus increasing the risk. So there's going to be a new upgrade item that is tradable called the Ornate Maul Handle, and it's been added to the Bounty Hunter store for 1.2 million Bounty Hunter reward points. So when you've used this item on the Granite Maul, it will reduce it back down to 50%, and when it's lost on death, it's going to drop 375,000 coins for your opponent. Now, there was talk of putting this on the Grotesque Guardian. However, I do think maybe making it more common and keeping it around maybe a 300 to 400k risk is probably more appropriate than it being like a couple mil drop from a PVM boss. And the other item that was considered overpowered was the Din's Bulwark. I don't remember anyone complaining about this item until we started talking about it in the poll blogs, but they said when used in combination with Black Dragonhide, the Bulwark made tanking and escaping in PvP situations extremely easy. Initially, they're going to reduce the defensive stats all around on the Din's Bulwark. However, after some feedback, they're only going to reduce the magic defense bonus from 18 down to 0. Another change that they're making today is to bind, snare, and entangle. Now, the standard spellbook isn't used as much for PvPing, as the freeze spells are not nearly as good as the ancient magic spells. For example, Ice Barrage deals a bunch of damage and freezes the target for almost 20 seconds, where Entangle freezes the target for only 14.4 seconds and deals no damage, and has its duration halved if they have Protect from Magic on. While the ancient spells are balanced by their high requirements, we thought it would be beneficial to improve the Bind, Snare, and Entangle spells by removing the duration limiting effect of Protect from Magic. So Protect from Magic will no longer have the freeze time, which makes it so if you do hit them with the spell, you're going to always be freezing them for 14.4 seconds or whatever spell you cast. Another thing I would like to change is making some of them free to play, and I'm going to be honest, I just haven't ever logged on in a free to play world in a while, so I'm not even sure if some of these were already free to play. But the only freeze spell to remain members only right now is Entangle, as there's some concerns about it being overpowered. The Last Man Standing rework, it was just released last week, so there's a few changes. But overall, they seem to be happy with how the rework went. Most of these seem to be quality of life changes or minor bug fixes. No major content changes, like for example, the smoke puff animation now has a matching sound when loot crates are open. XP drops no longer overlap with the HUD. So overall, no major changes to that. We're getting some more chat heads for the Elven Kingdom getting reworked. They're just trying to make it fit in better with the existing NPCs. And coming up soon, there's going to be a poll blog for a few other graphical changes. The big one is to the Dragonstone armor set, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like any of the proposed options here. I just think it kind of looks goofy. I think the entire design just needs to be changed somewhat, I don't know. I personally think we should scrap the rune armor idea and just come up with something completely different and unique, because I personally don't really like any of these three options. And last up here, they're looking at changing the welcome screen for the first time in quite a while. I think that's a great idea because it looks very outdated right now, and no one pays attention to it. So I think if they actually changed it up on a frequent basis, I would actually pay attention to the welcome screen for new updates, maybe new polls, and just any information that is useful to have there. I think it's a great idea. As always, there are quite a few small changes and bug fixes, but that's pretty much it for the content updates this week. Now, starting very soon, as the European Union always needs to be different, there's going to be some changes to the way that anyone in that region is going to make purchases online. As of September 14th, 2019, people who live in the European Economic Area will have to pass an additional bank security check when making a purchase. This is due to the introduction of the Payment Services Directive. This means that sometimes when purchases are made, it will need to be validated by any two of the following three methods, providing information such as a password or PIN, using a smartphone or a USB key, or biological verification. So they're going to take your blood. Now, they're going to get a fingerprint or voice recognition, so if you're in that area, just be aware you may need to jump through a few more hoops to play RuneScape. Alright, so we have the Runefest schedule announcement. Now, the most exciting part of Runefest, or for at least for people who aren't going, is the RuneScape keynotes, which will tell you what we can expect to get over the next 12 months. So it's usually a bunch of new reveals, new content, new planned updates. No idea what we're going to go for this year. As wording was scrapped this year, we only have had 2 major content updates, and I am assuming the Fromnik Exiles will fill that 3rd spot. Now, my best guess for next year would probably be another quest, as people really enjoy them and they pass pretty much every time. I wouldn't imagine they'd be proposing another skill, probably a new major PVM update, as we haven't actually gotten too many of those this year, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm excited to see what we get though. Runefest is on October 4th, so we have around 1 month to go before we get those reveals. Now, we didn't end up getting a runelite update this week. It seems to be happening every 2 weeks or even every month now. Now, one story from this week that I find really interesting is apparently there could have been a nerf to the 3rd Age Druidic Cloak, but there's actually no proof of any change ever happening. But a lot of players swear that the Druidic Cloak actually had +6 prayer before, and now it's down to +3. And as this item is actually so rare, there isn't any picture evidence of this cloak having a 6 prayer bonus, except for anecdotal evidence. I personally think this is hilarious. Would only affect maybe a dozen people or something. Next up here, Iron Higer is the very first Ironman to achieve 200 million Slayer. That is an amazing achievement, as the Ironman game mode came out quite a bit after the regular game mode, as well as it just being less efficient and longer to complete. So congrats to Iron Higer for an amazing achievement. We actually had another Jagex moderator leave this week. Mod Atlas is leaving Jagex. While I think he worked a bit more on RS3, he was also an engine developer for Old School RuneScape as well. Very unfortunate, as there's a lot of engine work to be done in Old School RuneScape, and losing a senior developer that's working on the engine, it's a big loss. Hopefully he's moving on to bigger and better things. Now, after the LMS rework, there's actually a rise in the amount of LMS bots, as there's now tradable items you can get from the store that were worth quite a bit of money and still are worth a bit. Hopefully they get dealt with pretty soon here, as they're just farming the Truver parchments and selling them directly to the Grand Exchange and making a fair bit of money doing so. And lastly, I just wanted to have a quick look at the drama calendar. I almost forgot about it, as we've been fairly drama free for a couple months now. Even July and August, not that much going on there. So we had a pretty spicy start to the year, but everything has slowed down after pretty much March. So honestly, good job. Not too many big errors over the last couple of months. And that's it for community news this week. And as always, I'd like to go over the weekly Q&A for any interesting tidbits of information related to future updates or anything like that. So to begin with here, over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of inquiries about the Grotesque Guardian, and no direct answer has been given, although they did say in the Q&A that they are aware of the concern. They have been compiling a bunch of the suggestions, and they're going to put it on the backlog. Will there ever be any new ores or bars added to Old School RuneScape? The RS3 rework went pretty well, however, with Old School RuneScape in particular, there's lots of nostalgia attached to things like this. Although it may be useful for this kind of skill, they don't think it would feel very old school, and they said they can add more content without changing the existing tier, however it just would look weird. So with the poll on partnerships failing, but the release of the new POH portal in Prifddinas, are we going to get a new host style based around the elves, or any other POH host styles? They said they certainly hope so. It's really a job for the artists, and we're going to have to see if they have time. Is it intentional that the Gothixian icon is not tradable? It's kind of odd, as other similar items, for example the Staff of Light and the Saradomin's Light, are both tradable. When there's an item like this, we may want to keep some of the components untradable to avoid a disparity between the price of the resulting item and its parts. They're not against changing it, but there was an intentional reason for doing that. Can we please remove Ancient Effigies from the Revenant drop table? Is there only a placeholder item? They're not sure about it yet. I'll have to look into it and ask the data team what and how we would do it. Why was there another 3-tick weapon added, even though we already have the ham and the RPG launcher? Generally speaking, the method of getting those wasn't very fun, and they didn't really look like weapons anyway. The quest cape is increasingly difficult to obtain, but the reward stays the same, and it isn't great. Would it be possible to include a teleport to the champion, heroes, and myths guild? No, they wouldn't be looking to buff that, unfortunately. When is the notice board coming out for POHs? Mod Maz is working hard on it. She's tweeted a few things, but it's getting along nicely. It won't be in tomorrow's update, but hopefully soon. Does the Kingdom of Miscellanea continue to collect things when you run out of membership? Yes, it actually does. It actually doesn't care if your membership expires. Can the Gauntlet drop rates be released? We leave that decision to the lead developer, and ModEd has said that he'd like to do it down the road a bit. Can we get a new boss for Giants? We would like to eventually, but there isn't time in the current schedule. Can the Orb of Oculus be released to the wider game? They're not in a position to say right now. There is a thread in the forum, however, to apply for one in the meantime. Ooh, I might actually go do that. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave it a like. I always appreciate it, and I will see you next time.